Ever wonder what it's like to be burned alive and still have a story to tell? Well, you're in luck, because that's exactly what happened to me. I'm Joan of Arc, also known as the Maid of Orléans. I was a simple farm girl who ended up leading armies, talking to saints and rattling powerful men so hard they decided to set me on fire. Sounds crazy, right? Trust me, I used to think so too. But if you stick around, I'll spill all the details. The fear, the faith, the battles, and finally, the flames. Let's clear one thing up. I didn't start out dreaming of swords and kings. I was just a teenager from a small village called Domremy in France. I helped around the farm, prayed with my family, and tried to be good, nothing fancy. But then I started hearing these voices. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Can you imagine telling people you hear angels? You'd expect them to laugh or call you nuts. But these voices felt real, like a push in my heart. They told me I had a mission, something big that would save my country. Yeah, I get how weird that sounds. If a friend said, "Hey, angels are talking to me," you might raise an eyebrow. But I believed. Those voices gave me this fire inside, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. They said I had to help the Dauphin, basically the Prince Charles, and get him crowned as King of France. Now, imagine walking up to a powerful noble and going, "Hi, I'm a teenage girl who can't read, but God told me to lead your army." Crazy idea, right? But guess what? I actually convinced people. Maybe it was my passion, maybe it was fate. Some of you might be thinking, no way could a teen girl lead an army. Honestly, I kind of agree. It was nuts. But the 100 Years' War was raging, and France was in deep trouble. England was gobbling up land, and Burgundian allies were helping them. People were desperate for a miracle. So there I was, a peasant in armor, riding a horse, carrying a banner with religious images. I might have looked like a kid playing dress-up, but I believed with all my heart that I was doing God's work. Turns out that kind of faith can be pretty contagious. Let's talk about Orléans. That city was under siege by the English, and everyone thought it was doomed. Then I showed up. The fighting was intense, arrows flying, cannons booming, men screaming. It was chaos. Now, I'm not claiming I was some magical superhero, but my presence gave the troops a huge morale boost. They started believing again, and when people believe, they fight harder. We broke the siege. It was a massive win. That's how I got the nickname Maid of Orléans. Sounds fancy, right? In that moment, I felt like nothing could stop me. Or France. Boy, was I wrong. After Orléans, everything felt like a rush. Victory after victory, with me in the thick of it, waving my banner like a maniac. I can still hear the horses galloping and the clang of steel. I was sure we were on a holy mission. Honestly, I was too young and fearless to think about failing. Then came the grand moment. Marching to Reims so Charles could be crowned King of France. It was a huge ceremony, full of cheers and banners. I stood there, my heart pounding, thinking, look at us. We did it. It felt like a dream. But the war wasn't over. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Success can turn on you in a snap. People start whispering, who is she, really? Is she a witch? Is this some demonic trick? Even powerful allies get jealous or suspicious. I was riding high on victories, but not everyone was thrilled about my fame. Some clergy and nobles raised eyebrows at my voices and bold moves. Meanwhile, the English hated me for obvious reasons. I kept ruining their plans. And the Burgundians? Let's just say they had their own agenda. I was about to learn that winning on the battlefield doesn't always protect you from betrayal. I got captured in 1430 while defending Compiègne. Let's just say it wasn't my best day. Burgundian soldiers surrounded my group, and we were outnumbered big time. My horse wouldn't jump a certain gap. Maybe it sensed the danger. The Burgundians snatched me off that horse, and that was that. Next thing I knew, I was their prisoner, a major prize they could sell to the English. Ever feel like life flips on you so fast your head spins? One moment, you're the hero. The next, you're somebody's bargaining chip. Yeah, that's exactly how it felt, like falling off a cliff. Being sold to the English was basically the worst thing that could happen. These were the folks I'd been fighting tooth and nail. Now they had me locked up. And trust me, their hospitality was lacking. Cold cells, iron chains, guards who sneered at me like I was a circus freak. Fun times. I tried to stay strong, kept praying, and asked my voices for guidance. But the voices felt distant. Maybe it was my fear, maybe I was losing hope. Still, I believed God would stand by me. I mean, I'd come this far on faith, right? It had to count for something. Then came the trial. Actually, it was more like a circus. They paraded me in front of church officials who were determined to prove I was a heretic and a fraud. They grilled me about my visions. Were they angels or demons? They questioned my clothes. Why do you dress like a man? Honestly, it felt like they had already decided I was guilty, and the questions were just a formality. I tried to answer with honesty. I said, I wore this armor for practical reasons, and I spoke the truth as best I knew it. But logic didn't matter. They wanted a scapegoat. Sometimes I'd fire back at them. They'd ask if I was in God's grace, and I'd say, if I'm not, I hope God puts me there. If I am, I hope God keeps me there. That wasn't me being clever, just real. But the judges twisted everything I said. It was stressful. Day after day, I stood in that courtroom, exhausted and alone. You ever have that dream where you're talking but no one is really listening? That's what it felt like. Except it wasn't a dream, and the punishment was going to be harsh if they found me guilty. I won't lie, fear started sinking its claws into me. Rumors swirled. People hinted that burning at the stake was the next step. I kept reminding myself, I'm innocent in God's eyes. But what if that didn't matter to these men in robes? What if they just wanted a show, a big moment to scare anyone else who dared challenge them or the English? Sometimes I thought about escaping. I even tried to leap from a tower once, but that didn't work out so well. The dreams of battlefields and cheering crowds seemed so far away now, like another lifetime. I was officially condemned as a heretic. They said my voices were demonic, that my refusal to wear women's clothes was a crime, and that I was rebelling against the church's authority. To be honest, it stung. I loved my faith. I never wanted to go against the church, but these trials? They were about power, not truth. It felt like watching a puppet show, where everyone pretends it's fair, but the ending is fixed. And me? I was the puppet they were about to toss into the fire. If that sounds dramatic, trust me, it felt even worse in person. At one point, they made me sign a document confessing I was lying about the voices. I was so scared of the stake that I wavered. I thought, maybe if I say what they want, I can survive. So I put my mark on their paper, hoping it would save me. But guess what? It didn't. A few days later, I went back to wearing men's clothes in prison, mostly because the guards harassed me if I didn't, or so the story goes. They saw that as a relapse, a sure sign of my heresy. So they sentenced me to death. When they read my sentence, my heart pounded like a drum. Death by fire, burned at the stake. I tried to be brave, but who can be calm about getting roasted alive? I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed. I asked my voices, will I feel much pain? I got no clear answer. The guards took me from my cell, and I remember my legs feeling like jelly. I thought maybe I'd faint, but I forced myself to keep walking. If this was my end, I wanted to face it head on, like the soldier I was, or used to be. They led me to the marketplace in Rouen. Yeah, not some hidden spot. This was public, meant to scare everyone watching. A huge crowd gathered. Some people were curious, some were angry. Others looked sad, like they wanted to help but couldn't. My eyes darted around, seeing faces, hearing murmurs. Smoke from the woodpile stung my nose. I tried to catch my breath, but it felt like the air was pressing down on me. That's when it hit me. This is really happening. I'm about to die. And not just die in flames in front of a mob of strangers. They tied me to the stake. The rope bit into my arms. A priest offered me a crucifix, and I clutched it like a lifeline. People say I asked for a church to be built right in front of me, so I could keep my eyes on it. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it went, but I do know I tried to keep my focus on God. The executioner lit the wood. Flames began to lick at my feet. My throat closed up. I screamed, begging God for mercy. Ever burn your finger by accident? Multiply that by 1,000. Fire is terrifying. It crackles and roars, dancing up your body. The smoke chokes you, so even your final screams get lost. The pain is immediate and all-consuming, but it also feels surreal, like your brain can't process it fast enough. I heard the crowd yelling, some crying, some calling me a saint. My last thought was, am I doing this for nothing? Then I remembered the battles, the victories, the hope I gave people. I clung to that. My faith told me that no matter what men said, I was doing God's will. That thought was my last comfort. One moment, I was there, locked in agony. The next, it was like silence, darkness, then light. Death is strange, like stepping through a doorway, but you're not really sure what's on the other side. I guess I'm proof that there is something beyond, or else I wouldn't be chatting with you now. But let me tell you, that final moment still haunts me. Sometimes I can almost feel the flames, but from here, I also see the bigger picture. My life was short, but it made waves. And that's something no fire can erase. So yeah, they burned me. They thought that would be the end of my story. But guess what? Years later, I got a retrial, posthumously of course. They decided, oops, she wasn't a heretic after all. Great timing, right? I'm sure I would have appreciated that piece of news when I was, alive. Still, that's how history works. Sometimes it takes forever to admit mistakes. People started calling me a martyr. Eventually, the church made me a saint. Talk about going from criminal to superstar. But the question is, does any of that fix what happened? I'll let you decide. If you're wondering what happened after my death, well, the war dragged on. The English and the French kept trading blows. Eventually, France got its act together and pushed the English back. Did my actions inspire them? Maybe. I like to think so. Because if a teenage farm girl can lead armies and get a prince crowned, maybe it reminded everyone not to give up. Courage is contagious. It's a spark that can light a bigger fire, though hopefully not the kind that kills you. Trust me, one experience with literal fire is enough for any lifetime. I often get asked, Joan, were you just a pawn? Maybe. Powerful men definitely used my image to rally troops. Others used me as an example of what happens when you step out of line. But here's the thing. I knew what I was doing in my heart. I believed I was carrying out God's plan. And yes, I was naive in some ways. I was just a teenager. But I also had guts, faith, and a big heart for France. I don't regret fighting. I only regret that it ended in flames. But regrets don't change what happened, do they? People try to shape my story to fit their agenda. Some call me a feminist icon, others a religious fanatic, and some just think I was a lucky kid who got attention. But you know what? I'm just Joan. A girl who heard voices, took up a sword, and tried to bring hope to a country at war. I'm not sure I was meant to be a role model. I was just someone who stood up for what she believed in, even when the whole world laughed. And maybe that's all a hero is, a person crazy enough to follow their conviction. So how do I feel about being remembered as a saint, a martyr, a legend? Honestly, it's flattering, but also weird. I died in a blaze of pain. I never got to grow old, never got to see the peace I helped fight for. But if my life story helps someone find their own bravery, or sparks their own faith in something greater, then maybe it's worth it. Maybe my voice can live on, echoing in every person who faces impossible odds. Because let's face it, we all have our battles. Mine just happened to involve real swords and actual flames. So that's my death, my entire journey wrapped up in smoky, burning intensity. I hope you got something out of this, maybe a spark of courage or a reminder that standing up for what's right often comes at a price. If you ever feel like the odds are stacked against you, remember, a farm girl once led armies and stood up to kings. Yes, I got burned in the end, but my spirit didn't vanish. It's here, telling you this story. If you're listening now, I guess that means I'm still alive in a way. And honestly, that feels like victory to me.